Good, awesome.
Why not, right?
Are we being recorded now?
We are. We're good to go.
Okay, we're good to go. So everyone can review the agenda. Do we have any visitors at this time? Do we have any show of hands for visitors?
At this point, we do not.
Okay.
I don't know why my camera is not working. Sorry.
The women didn't need to get on to get it. Let me. All righty. So, how's everybody doing today?
Good.
All good. Well, welcome to our meeting today. We have a lot of things on the agenda. What I want to start off with is what we did for our previous meeting recap. Last meeting, we had the call center policy and procedure review, and that was shared with us by Cindy Harper. And then we had a stops data report presentation by Lieutenant Tinseth, and enlightened us on a lot of things. So that's what we did last month. So as we proceed with the meeting for this month, we're going to start off with liaison reports. I do know Councilman Zelenka will be here a little bit later. I'll give him an opportunity to speak then. But I will begin with Councilor Ye, if you have anything to report to us.
Yeah, so we had a work session, a follow-up for the ad hoc committee on police policy that we sent members to, and there were two motions that were passed. If I was smart enough, I'd have them in front of me, but essentially one of them was to direct staff to research the items that ask for us to lobby things at the state level so that we can have more information so that the council can choose which ones they want to pursue in the next long session at the state legislature. So we're moving forward on those. And then the second motion was around having our police auditor do one, maybe two, depending on how much material there is, work sessions, educating the council on the oversight process that the city has and the history behind that. We have some new counselors. I think most counselors weren't there when the police auditor was set up. I know I wasn't. So starting that conversation of educating ourselves and hopefully the community, if they choose to watch or look at the materials, is the second thing that we agreed upon. Our staff also took all of the recommendations and put them into a matrix divided by whether there's something that staff can just do, like something the chief could do or something the city manager could do, or if there are things that need to be done at a council level, so maybe a charter change, and then things that would need to be done at a state or federal level. I don't think it's on the ad hoc page yet, but it's in the meeting materials from last Wednesday's meeting. And I actually should, if you guys didn't get it, I should get it sent out. Could get it to Holly so she can send that out to everyone. Oh, and Ian's so fast and it's in the chat if people need to get the link. So
Thank you.
That is my report if anyone has any questions.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Haynes Garcia.
Yeah, sorry, I was opening up the links that Ian had said. So the Civilian Review Board finally met again this month. We took December and January off. This month we had a fairly light agenda for Tuesday, partly because we were going to meet with Michael Clues from the police union, but he was not able to join us, and so hopefully that session will happen next month. One thing that did come up during our discussion of the cases before us this month was that, like Councilor Ye, I would have this in front of me, but I don't. There's a policy, it's the Courteous Policy. I can't remember the number on it, but the policy in the about courteousness. It lists in the third sort of subsection, there's a list of categories that you shouldn't use epithets or slurs related to race, religion, ethnicity, gender. There's a list of them. And disability status was not in that. And so there was a request from the CRB that I make that known that seems to be missing from that policy, and it would probably be something that, in keeping with the spirit of the policy and the spirit of Eugene, add that to the list.
Thank you. Commissioner Mogart.
Yes, hello. There was no liaison report, but I know that we're going to have a discussion about some of the outreach efforts that have been done. We did have a meeting, and I'm sure we will discuss it this evening, with Mayor Venice and City Manager Maderi yesterday. Was that yesterday? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll have a little bit of a discussion about that, but I think it was a good conversation. I was really excited to be a part of it.
Great. Commissioner Shivers. Commissioner Dominguez.
Hello, yes, sorry. What is this?
You're on Commissioner comments?
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Yes, I just have one question.
Yes.
I was wondering what the progress is for the DPSST numbers being added to the uniforms. I just would like to check on that, and that's it.
Commissioner Rimbrot.
I don't have any updates on this time. Thanks.
Commissioner Robertson has an excused absence due to law school activities. At this time, we had the Eugene Police recruiting team spoke with us, and from that, I had Commissioner B. Wynn. He was attendance. He's going to do a little bit of an update. Did you also, Bonnie, able to meet with the recruiters? Commissioner Dominguez? She's muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I did not meet with the recruiters.
Okay, so Commissioner V's going to be giving us a little bit of an update of what he did. Go ahead, V.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So last week I met with Sergeant Williams and Officer Peckles to discuss about the recruitment team's effort in recruiting more people of color into police work. Some of the recruitment strategies include placing ads, flying out candidates when they are in the process of deciding whether they wanted to come to Eugene. And this is important because, you know, if the family objects, it could be a deal breaker. We also discuss about hiring from within our own community. Some places to recruit include U of O, LCC, Oregon State University, as well as high schools, and the Citizens Academy. We talked about the challenges, which include cultural and historic references Black, Hispanic, and Asian American communities have of law enforcement that might be a hindrance in, you know, people wanting to join the police. The perceptions and sometimes personal experience is that, you know, police themselves are not, you know, always law-abiding, and sometimes they're violent. But conversely, some choose to be a part of the change rather than being observers from the outside. We are also limited in legacy recruitment in some, larger departments. You have children who sometimes follow their parents into law enforcement, or even their grandparents. But because, this is a smaller department compared to, for example, San Francisco SFPD, it could be a challenge with legacy recruitment. The weather is also, it could be intimidating for some people who have not lived in a four-season, Northwest. In Eugene, the summers here are short. You all know this. It's warm, it's dry, and mostly clear. But in the winters, we get very cold, wet, and overcast weather. I think it would be wonderful if we can partner up with the recruitment team when the team tables at community events and colleges. I think that would be, kind of a twofold. We can partner with them and do our outreach. And I've run this by, Chair Bogg, and I'll let him decide whether this is something that is, viable for us. And lastly, we discussed about, other needs such as, resources that, we need to be mindful of. If an officer is moving here with their family, just like I have, I moved here 5 years ago, still struggling to get a primary care doctor, and I think if somebody's going to move here for work, they would be concerned if they can get, on somebody's primary doctor's list, and their family, their spouse, their partner, and their kids can as well. So that's something that we can, look into, that we should look into. There were a lot of things discussed, but I won't bore you with it. If you feel like you want to know more, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share it with you. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Commissioner V? Bonnie?
I'm so sorry, by the way, I was eating. So I was just wondering, so I had some ideas, and I talked to some Hispanic people, and there was kind of just a consensus that the way to reach Hispanic people would be just kind of put postings where we're located, which is basically restaurants and stuff, Mexican restaurants. So if it would be lovely to see advertisements at restaurants, because that's kind of what we have around here for us specifically. And also the Plaza Latina, which I think they changed their name. There's something else, but the Mexican grocery store, there's one in Springfield. Well, I guess we could recruit some people from Springfield maybe, and also church. And I think some of the stuff that was already on the list was the Centro Latino and stuff. But for the church stuff, I've gone there before. It's been a little while since I've been to church, but they have the after church itself, they have a donut hour or coffee hour or something, and that would be a good place to set up. If you need Spanish speakers, I am willing to be there as well. And yeah, so that would be a good time. Anyway,
thanks.
That's all.
Commissioner Dominguez brought up a really good point. I did talk to the recruitment team about getting a flyer that we can, utilize in helping them with the recruitment effort. Something that is digital as well as hard copies, if we don't have a printer or access to one. But a digital one, we can also put on our social media if we wanted to. On LinkedIn, for example, many of us, have a wide net of connections on there that might know someone who wants to be an officer here in Eugene. But that's a great point. Thank you.
All right. So, Commissioner Nguyen, you can use this opportunity next to do your normal. Do you have any commissioner comments?
Not at this point. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you.
No, you're doing fine. So, do you have any?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you. Maybe later when we do closing comments.
No problem. For my comments, And this, I have this, and this was something that I read 2 days ago, and this was provided by the Eugene Police Department. And I just want to read this, and this was good information, good intel. February is Black History Month, an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. Like many other places in the U.S., Eugene had a history of racial discrimination that prevented Black people from many things, including employment, buying real estate, and renting a place to live within the city limits. Eugene Police hired the department's first Black police officer in 1960s, Officer Lim McKinney. Besides serving the community in his police uniform, Lim McKinney also was an ordained minister at St. Mark's CME Church. The St. Mark's Church is still located at 1167 Sam's Reynolds Street. And if y'all didn't know, one of the descendants of Sam Reynolds is on our board right now. Officer Davesha is a descendant of him. The St. Mark's Church is still located there. The church itself is a symbol for a community that had to relocate outside of city limits when their home in area of Alton Baker Park was removed for expansion of the Ferry Street Bridge. Officer McKinney's service to our community happened in a period when many other African Americans were fighting to dismantle racist practice. At that time, Martin Luther King's visionary leadership, Rosa Parks' bravery, and sacrifice of many other Black people resulted in a movement against racial segregation that transformed the country for better. A lot has changed since Officer McKinney joined the Eugene Police Department. Today, we celebrate African American staff and acknowledge that we still have work to do until every person feels accepted and respected in all areas of law enforcement. And I have a picture of Lim McKinney in this, and that was done. And these are the type of things that I like to see, we do more of. And I call it talking about the positive things that we have, acknowledging them, because we can sit all day talking about things that are on the negative end. That's pretty simple, but we need to balance it. And I want to appreciate the Eugene Police for putting that together, sharing something, because I did not know that as a Black American, and that was good intel. So next, what we'll be doing is our Chief's report, and Chief Skinner, I'll give it to you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. It's good to see you. Again, I'll look forward when we can get in the room together. I think we miss out on a lot of relational time when we can't be across from each other. So I'm hopeful that'll happen when it's safe to do that. I'm going to keep my comments brief, and Commissioner Boggs, I'll let you know, I already gave our special guests that are scheduled for 6:15 to log on early in the event that we get done early, so we don't have that dead space. So I think you'll see, Holly, you may see some of those folks coming on. So just know that that's going to happen. Couple of comments. First off, let me just address some of this, the courtesy policy and adding the disability thing. I got that note. Dr. Garcia, I got that note right here. I think that's something easy for Julie to take a look at. I think that's a pretty easy fix and certainly very reasonable. Commissioner Dominguez, the DPSST numbers are underway right now, and those are specifically articulated for when we deploy staff for crowd control to have those visible. So that's what that House bill or Senate bill specifically articulates, that that's identifiable when conducting specific crowd control activities or protest activities. And so we're working on that. So we had to order some things and think about how we had fixed those to uniforms and those kinds of things. So all of those legislative measures, all 23 of them that have different deadlines for us, we're working really hard to meet those deadlines, and we've done a really good job. I just can't say enough about Julie Smith and just how hard she's worked and how much she brings to the policy position just based on her experience and just her work ethic. So she's been a fantastic addition to the Chief's office. Speaking of legislation, today I actually testified in a short session on another House bill. So there's continued movement around police reform and trying to fine tune some of the legislation that was passed in the long session of 2021. Like in anything, we try to do the best we can as legislators and professionals to create statute, law, rules that make sense. And then as you live in them for a little while, you identify a couple of little adjustments you need to make. And so we're kind of in the phase of making a few adjustments to some of those things. And so I testified on that today. And so that's part of my role. I'll let you guys know that in April, I take over the presidency for our statewide Chiefs Association. So this particular body of police commission and the things that we're doing here will be often heard through me statewide. So there's some real opportunity to leverage that position and actually create some leadership and lead from the front statewide. So I just encourage you to think about how you might be able to leverage me over this next year with moving law enforcement forward on a statewide basis, not just here in Eugene. So I just throw that out. Just a quick update on kind of where we're at. Staffing still continues to be tough. As you can imagine, hiring the right people is important. We are undergoing mandatory training right now around ethical leadership. And it's been really good. I went through it this week, and it's a first block of 2 blocks. The first one is identifying the problem and readjusting our paradigm around what we think about training and where we put our energy around training. And then the second block is all leadership, about how to have that personal courage and that ethical courage to break down some of the stereotypes and some of the long-standing practices in law enforcement of protectionism. And so I really like that the staff is engaged and seems to be really enjoying that training, and it's being delivered in a way that I think is resonating deeply with our people. So that's good. So ethical leadership is a real focus for us. We are looking at another module in the later part of this year around impartial and unbiased policing. And so we're vetting a few different types of trainers / vendors / companies that deliver that type of training. And so we're doing that right now. So we have a real commitment to bringing that as well to our training curriculum. We'll continue to keep hiring. We're getting ready to finalize kind of the job description update on the community service officer through the supplemental budget. When we add that money to hire 13 additional, 4 of those will be supervisors. Those 4 supervisors will come within our existing ranks because we've done a really good job of growing some leaders within our existing CSO structure. And then we're going to try and grab 13 new highly ethical leaders for the Eugene Police Department and build that team. When all's said and done, that team is going to be 23, 24 strong with good leadership and supervision, and we'll try to deploy them 24/7 so that we can be meeting community needs and answering certain calls for service with that alternative response. And that takes officers out of that mix, and I think creates a better atmosphere of customer service for those people that are asking for kind of that lower level response from us and don't necessarily need a sworn police officer to respond because of a safety issue or fear of harm. So we're working on that. In addition to all the other hiring we've done, with down at I think 15 or 16 police officers, down a few dispatchers, professional staff, we're down at least 10 or 12 in various areas. And so we're feeling the pain just like everybody is. And our success rate is not amazing. This last process, we had 57 sign up to test. I think only 40 or 45 of them showed up to test. And by the time all was said and done, we ended up with 5 that are in background right now. And 1 lateral from Hawaii, who looks to be an amazing catch for us based on his experience, his family connection here to the area, and just some of the early information about him as a lateral is really, really promising. So I'm hopeful that the 5 will pass background and that the lateral will pass background and then ultimately pass psych. And then we might be able to add 6 additional officers next month. So that's the main. So I'm going to stop there and see if there's any real quick questions now. And I know that later on in the agenda, I'm kind of back on. We'll talk a little bit about some other things that are going on in the community.
I had a real brief question.
Yeah. Mogar.
I'm sorry. Real brief question. The lateral from Hawaii, is that an exchange program? Are you going to be going over there for a little bit?
Well, that's, you know what, I tried. Yeah, I'm happy to let him sit in my seat for a while, and I'll go over to the Big Island and drive a patrol car. I'll tell you, the background investigator didn't mind getting that assignment because he went to Hawaii to do the background. That's the one thing that I know that you've heard me say, but I think is really critical for this body to hear, is that the background is really where we put a lot of energy, because that's how we determine the character of the person we're hiring. And there's many agencies that take shortcuts around that. And the one thing that we've done here since I've been here and before, and been really impressed with, is the amount of time, energy, effort, and money we put into actually flying our skilled investigators to the homes of these people, their hometowns, where they work, and start digging into the type of character we're trying to hire. It's expensive, it's time consuming, but I believe that investment yields better results on the back end if we do that hard work.
Commissioner Winbrock.
Hey, Chief. Hey, Chief, great to see you. Thank you again so much for coming to the Whitaker Community Council meeting last night, and welcome back, Officer Tester. It's great to see your face again. I have a quick question about overdose response procedures. We've had a couple of community members reach out to me about an incident on the afternoon of January 29th or 19th rather, and I'm not sure if this is going to the Civilian Review Board, but basically I wasn't there. I was reached out to by community members and the executive director of Community Outreach for Radical Empowerment. They're called CORE. There was an active overdose at Washington Jefferson Park. Apparently one of the executive directors, who's a licensed social worker, was trying to administer life-saving aid, and an officer responded, and she's alleging that the officer initially impeded her capacity to provide overdose response. And so I wanted to just ask, what are the overdose response procedures for EPD officers, and what kind of training the agency utilizes for the overdose response training, and if this specific incident is the body camera footage is being reviewed, and if that's going to the Civilian Review Board.
Yeah, I reviewed that body cam footage, and so as usual, there are a couple of different nuances that aren't accurately portrayed in the telling of that story. What I'll tell you is, oftentimes this is one of the challenges you have when you have multiple resources responding to the same call, is when the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, you have no idea what you're coming upon. So when you have an officer that gets dispatched to a potential overdose, actually this officer was dispatched to a cardiac arrest with probable CPR. So he arrives on scene thinking that he needs to be performing CPR, only to find people kind of huddled around somebody, not knowing who they are or to what extent they're trained or not trained. You can expect an officer to try and take command of that scene. And subsequently, you can see on the body cam footage that the suspect is alert, conscious, breathing, does not seem to be in crisis. So our assumption is Narcan was actually deployed, but we can certainly take a look at that. That's in the, if I understand, and I know that Leah, our auditor, is on here. If you want to move her to a panelist instead of an attendee, she can kind of speak to, when we get these complaints, she will absolutely take a look at that and classify it appropriately. And then it kind of goes through our administrative process. But CPR, first aid, and Narcan certified all officers the ability to do that. And just one of the challenges is when we go into those environments, we don't have any idea who's who and to what extent people are helping or not. And so taking command of that scene is important sometimes. And I recognize that sometimes when we do that, it doesn't feel good for people. And that maybe they feel a little bit overlooked and marginalized. And so we want to be mindful of that as well. Leah, did you have a comment on this one?
I was just going to say that we did get that complaint as well, Ian, and we opened it up, and I was trying to figure out exactly how best to address it in a way that would facilitate the most understanding when I went out with COVID this week. You can probably tell from the sound of my voice. So So it's kind of a holding pattern, but we definitely received that and we are looking at that. And I've appreciated the responsiveness from EPD as far as getting me all the information I need to classify it appropriately.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing your COVID story. I hope you have a really speedy recovery. And I appreciate you answering the question, Chief. I assumed that there was going through the internal process, but I wanted to just make sure I could communicate that back to the community member who was interested. Appreciate you both.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Dominguez?
Hi. So I was just wondering, for the uniform numbers, it sounds like it's only going to go on the turtle gear. Is that correct?
Well, the way if I'm correct, in the way the House bill is written is it specifically is articulating those identifiers when engaged in crowd control activities. So not in the daily course of their duties. So when they grab their equipment for crowd control, or we have a known protest that we feel like we need to be prepared for, then that gear will be available to include that identifying number.
What is limiting EPD from possibly doing it on every uniform?
Me, I guess.
Okay.
we didn't think about whether or not that needed to be on their gear day in and day out. Understand that there's a variety of crowd control happens with a consistent and standardized set of gear and uniform. Day in and day out, I have many officers that are wearing a variety of different types of uniforms, both what we call Class A's and or Class B's or plain clothes. And so we did not entertain a DPSST number visible to every police officer that's engaged. We just tried to meet the legislative intent of the House bill.
May I ask if you happen to know off the top of your head, like the cost of the what you did put into effect?
I'm not going to have that. I can get it for you, but my sense is it's fairly de minimis.
Fairly what? Sorry.
De minimis. It's not a high cost. It's just a matter of ordering that stuff, and you know, I've got it. We tried to fold that into our uniform budget that we have here.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for taking the vocab word.
Thank you, Commissioner Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair Box. Chief, I forgot to mention earlier in my report two things that I learned from meeting with the recruitment team is that the process no longer automatically disqualify applicants with minor drug offenses or if they have debt. You know, this helped to kind of level out the playing field for minority applicants actually, and is really important as this was a barrier to some people in the past from going into law enforcement. Not sure if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
You know, I won't take a lot of time here, but I think, you know, it's a matter of being an organization that's willing to stay, you know, contemporary with the times. I think the legalization of marijuana is a great example of that. I mean, there was, you know, I'm finishing my 31st year, going into 32 here, and I can remember a time where any use of marijuana at any time in your career was a deal breaker. And we fast forward by 31 years, and my kids are growing up in a time where marijuana is seen much more akin to alcohol use than anything else. And so it takes kind of law enforcement leadership to, you know, be willing to shift kind of their paradigm around certain things that at one point were disqualifiers and understand that life happens, mistakes happen. You know, there's a lot of people that went through the challenges of the Great Recession that walked away from homes, were foreclosed on, needed to claim bankruptcy, you know, all of those things around debt. And at one point that was a deal breaker that, you know, back in the day that we just have a new normal we need to think about doing to your point to level that playing field. So, you know, it's just a matter of leadership. It's a matter of when you think about a person's character, the things that you really should be focusing on. You know, the nuances of that we always anchor to is that the sensitive things that we handle, you know, drug money, guns, those types of things, the position of power, you know, somebody that's really struggling financially, the thought is whether or not they're more susceptible to corruption if they're struggling financially. what I would say is that there's other indicators of that besides some of these financial conditions. And if you do a good job of figuring out somebody's and understanding the character of the human being, whether they're late on a couple of credit cards should mean a hell of beans. So we're working on that. We're trying to get better. And we're always open to taking a look at how we can look at things a little different.
Great. I'm going to go. We have two more people that have joined, and I want to give them an opportunity to do their comments because we have the time on our side. So Councilor Zelenka, do you have any comments?
No, I don't at this time, Chair Boggs. Thank you for, I'm sorry I was a little late. I had a commitment I had to do. So
we got your email, so I knew about that. So thank you. Thank you so much. And Commissioner Davis, do you have any comments?
Hello, everyone. I don't have any comments right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So where are we at as far as our guests with the Eugene School District?
Chair Boggs, they're all here and I can move them over as panelists.
Great. So the Eugene School District 4J Student Wellness and School Safety Team will be our featured guest today. And we have, I believe, 4 people. First, heading off is Carrie Skinner. She's Director of Student Wellness and School Safety. And she will be joined by Sherry Hoyland, Angie Meyer, and Clark Hansen. So without any further ado, I'm going to have the Eugene School District do their presentation for us.
Thank you. Good evening. It is 6:10 and we're going to try and keep this on point for the allotted time. We do have a presentation for you today. My name is Carrie Skinner and I'm the director of the Eugene School District's Department of Student Wellness and School Safety. We are a new department relatively within the last 3 years. Throughout COVID, we actually saw a need for investing heavy in prevention. And we've created a pretty robust team through COVID. And so Sherry Hoyland joined our team first, and she is a licensed school psychologist and is our behavioral safety assessment coordinator. You may hear terms that are synonymous with threat assessment, but she looks into, with multiple partners, threats of harm to others. And then we have Clark Hansen. He is our program security manager, and we were fortunate to grab him a little over a year ago from the University of Oregon. And he manages all of our security systems, and we'll talk about that. And then our suicide prevention coordinator is Angie Meyer, and that's harm to self. And so we have some Safe Routes to Schools coordinators that I'll let Clark talk about later in this presentation that work really closely with the city and the county on issues involving like the Chavez community most recently, and parkways and bikeways and walkways. So I just want to address the team. And so we're investing heavy in prevention, and connection is what we're focusing on. Connection is prevention. So without further ado, I'd like to let Sherry Hoyland start with her presentation.
Thank you. Is she muted?
No, I got it. Hi, I'm sorry. I could not find the unmute while screen sharing. So let me just share it again and we'll get going. There we go. So this is called threat assessment, and the Secret Service has been doing threat assessment for around 15 to 20 years. So there's a long history of research in this area. Recently, Oregon moved to behavioral safety assessments to be more trauma informed. So you might hear both of those terms as we go through. 4J adopted this back in 2019. As Carrie mentioned, I'm a Canadian psychologist and Oregon school psychologist, and I specialize in threat assessment and problematic sexual behaviors. Here we use the Salem-Kaiser Cascade model, and I just want to give you a brief overview of it. So the goal with threat assessment is really to detect and disrupt targeted violence in schools and the community. So we gather information to understand the threat of violence. And our goal is always, once we've detected and disrupted, we want to look at that student, increase inhibitors, and decrease the stressors. That naturally leads to a management plan where we can decrease the probability of that student engaging in violence. So the Secret Service identified something called leakage. And as a student goes down the pathway to violence, which I'll show you further down, we see either conscious or unconscious leakage of their plan. And that might come from a school assignment, a drawing, they might tell a peer, they might tell their teacher or a parent. And so these are all examples that the Secret Service gives of leakage. And so these, unfortunately, these students did go on to commit violent acts. So if we think these statements were made ahead of time, then the Secret Service really shares that we can disrupt that plan before it happens. And so that's our goal. We listen to the leakage, however it comes to us, and I always describe it as a puzzle. So we're putting together all the puzzle pieces to look and see what's happening for this child. When we look at targeted school violence in the past, we see that 90% are insider attacks, and then of that, 69% are current students. So as you can see, it's really important that our school district have a program that slows it down for this child in distress and looks to see how can we best support them. We want to quantify. Frequently, we will get teachers coming to us and saying, this student is violent. And so we really want to look and see, what does that look like? And so we place it on a continuum of seriousness. So we call the above list violent and the below list aggressive. And so we really want to look at the variables of that behavior and what's driving it. This is the puzzle that I was talking about. So if you look in both the little captions there, we have the same threat, a threat to shoot a teacher. But look how different the scenarios are. So the one on the left, the family was unhoused, limited parent supervision, and the parent wouldn't tell us if there was access to weapons. If you look on the right, we see positive parent supervision. There's no weapons in the home. The parents are concerned about their student, and the student said it after receiving a bad grade. So you can see that when we put those together, they look really different, and therefore the management plan is going to be different. So it's really important to slow it down and gather the data. We also look at what type of aggression is it? Reactive aggression is very affective. It's that cat backed into the corner. They still might scratch you, but there's no planning ahead of time. They're feeling threatened. If we look at the cat on the right, we see that's targeted aggression. There's a plan in place. It's developed over a period of time. And so every threat that comes in, we want to look at which aggression is it? Because again, that leads to a better management plan. We see pathway behavior. This is what I referenced earlier. So when a student is engaged in targeted violence, this is where the pathway comes in. We won't always see it in a perfectly linear fashion like this. They might double back, but we do see these individual stages. So there's ideation, the planning, the preparation, and that might include an experimental trial, which we would call a breach, and then implementation. And so when we gather that evidence, we look and see where they are on that pathway to see how far along are they and how intensive our plan for them and wraparound needs to be. So this is 4J's process. So our concern comes from parents, staff, students, community members, law enforcement, FBI, and Safeoregon. All of our school admin teams are level 1 trained. So they gather information through protocols and interviews, and they determine if it's a level 0, which is a dismissal, a level 1, a safety plan goes into place, or a level 2, and that's more significant. If it's a level 2, we bump it up. Sergeant Nelson from the EPD and Ashley Barnhill-Hubbard from Whitebird and myself are the investigative arm of that level 2 team. And so we meet with the family, we gather more in-depth information, and we look and see what's going on for this student in distress. Every second week, I lead the 4J threat assessment team, and it includes a bunch of community members. It includes the juvenile DA, it includes Lane County Mental and Behavioral Health, DYS, OYA, and a bunch of really great people that can just look and see what is this child in need of? Because if a child's going through a threat assessment, then we do consider them a child in distress. And that concludes the threat assessment piece. And now I'm going to hand it over to Clark.
Having trouble finding my cursor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I only have one slide, so I don't have as many slides to present with information, but I'll just go over some points of the areas that I work with. One of them, just to cover really quickly, is the Safe Routes to School program, since Sarah's not with us today. Just want to cover that. Sarah Mazey's the program coordinator for that. I skipped over my name. I'm Clark Hansen. I'm the Security Services Program Manager for Student Wellness and School Safety. We also added a new employee for the Safe Routes to School program today. And so we're looking forward to that program expanding. That is a regional team partnership between Eugene School District 4J, Bethel School District, and Springfield Public Schools. And they also have regional support from Lane Transit District. And their purpose, as Sarah describes it, is to create safe and easy and fun ways for kids to walk, bike, skate, scoot, bus, or carpool to school. She also puts on some great bike safety programs, and our campus safety and security monitors have gone out and helped with those, as well as some safe walk to school programs that she's put on. On the campus safety and security monitor program, which I'm involved with on a daily basis, we have 8 current campus security monitors across the 4 regions of the district. Those regions are North Eugene, South Eugene, Churchill, and Sheldon. Prior to this year, the campus safety and security monitors were based primarily at the high schools and didn't really cover the middle schools and the elementary schools that were feeders to those high schools. We changed that in 2021, and now they not only work within the high schools, but they also do regularly go to the elementary and the middle schools. And that's been very, very well received. We've had some great interactions with students as well as the staff at those schools, and been able to help out in great ways. The program goals for the campus safety and security monitors are to connect with the students, the families, and the staff, as well as community groups, to help and encourage the students to make positive choices and stay on the path to success in school and life. They also engage with students to build relationships and trust. And they work with school administrators to identify and mentor students who are struggling and may need support due to discipline issues or personal problems, family problems that they're going through. And the campus safety and security monitors are often one kind of stable point in a student's life where they can come to that person and talk about things that maybe they don't have anyone else to share those concerns with. They also report any observed violations of the student conduct code or unsafe conditions, and anything that could cause danger to the school staff or the students, and they report that to the administration. They also monitor the 4J facilities and grounds for damage, hazards, graffiti, and so on, and they investigate incidents and contact the Eugene Police Department as necessary. We have, like I said, 8 campus safety monitors from various backgrounds. We're really lucky to have the variety of individuals that we currently have. Several of them are athletic coaches for the district. We also have several that are previous 4J students, and so they're very familiar with the high schools that they are working in as well. We have some with law enforcement and security backgrounds. And so it's great to work as a team because we can pull all that experience together and share ideas and come up with creative solutions. I'll put in a plug here for some positions that we have open. If you know that anyone is interested in those, we currently have a lead position open, and that's a 12-month position for a campus security monitor. And that's going to assist us in further developing the program and also coordinating with the other team members out in the field and be an additional resource that we can kind of send out as needed as kind of a floater. Also, we have, we're kind of backfilling another campus security monitor position that is coming open in the near future, and that's a school year position. So that's summer off like the teachers have. Both those positions are posted on the 4J website right now. We also are looking towards the future. We've had a couple attempts to hire these individuals as well. And Chief Skinner alluded to the fact that it's very difficult to find people right now to fill positions, but we're looking for 2 nighttime campus security monitor positions. Those will be 12-month positions as well. And they will allow us to have a presence later in the evening at school activities, and also to provide patrols and alarm verification response and patrol of our district buildings and facilities. So we're looking at posting that again in the near future. Let's see, what else do I have here? I think that's about it. There's good information on all of our programs on the 4J website, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Let's see here. We have 2 participants' hand raised, but I can't see it here. Okay, there it's to the right. Commissioner Dominguez.
I was just wondering about. So I went to school in Springfield, and in my middle school, I guess I think one of them was a principal. I think the other one was a shop teacher. Both of them were later found to be pedophiles. And then same thing happened at my high school. One of the teachers was also a pedophile. So I guess I'm wondering how, I guess I have 2 questions. One of them is how many women are part of this like campus safety thing? Because all 3 men were men. So I guess I'm wondering like maybe girls might feel more comfortable with a woman to talk to build a relationship with and say, hey, by the way, this is happening. Not that it happens a lot, but you know, you never know, I guess.
Right. We currently have 1 female campus safety and security monitor on our team. We'd be happy to have more. We'll just see how the application process plays out. I would throw out that all of our employees are hired through the school district, and so they undergo the standard fingerprint-based background checks. And they're also, all of our campus safety and security monitors are licensed through DPSST as the unarmed security level. And so there's a certification there and training that takes place as well.
Does, what does it mean that you build relationships with the students? Like, how does that, like, I watched all the videos and like, I don't know if it was staged or what, but like at some point, like, the guys like pointed up and then like all the kids mimicked him for some reason. There was like nothing there. I'm wondering like what the relationship is.
Yeah, I was out there during the filming of that, and I'm not sure if it was an airplane or what, but it was kind of funny. We spent quite a bit of time out there doing those videos. I wouldn't say that I guess you could say that it was staged and that we predetermined which students were going to participate in it. However, the building of the relationships are, you know, just in normal contacts that they're making. They're around the schools on a daily basis, and they also have regular time that they may go to an elementary school during lunch and sit down and have lunch with the students and just have open conversations with them about how the day's going. Oftentimes they'll sit down with a student that's over in the corner that nobody's sitting with. And so they'll go over and eat lunch with that student and talk to them and see how things are going. Just regular contacts like that. I mean, there's no there's no one way that that's occurring. I mean, it's occurring throughout their day.
And are there educational, so again, because I had 3 people in my history of, aggression to kids, I guess I wonder, is there any kind of education that could be happening for children or these kids? And would it be under your purview to provide that kind of education? I don't know.
Well, they're not really meant to take the place of teachers or school administrators. And in fact, the majority of time, there may be teachers or school administration present. I mean, maybe not in the hallway when they contact a student that's headed to the restroom, may not be in class or something, and they take a little bit longer out there and roam the hallways, before going back, and they say, hey, how are you doing? Where are you supposed to be now? And stuff like that. But I mean, they're not there to really provide an education function, but more just to kind of observe and have that communication with the students.
So they can learn about the whole, so their observance is not, they'll observe the teachers too, right? I guess is what
if I can just jump in, we do educate, there's Aaron's Law. In 2015, Oregon legislation passed a new Senate bill, and it was Senate Bill 856, is known most commonly as Aaron's Law. And so Senate Bill 856 actually requires all Oregon public schools to provide instructional sessions on sexual abuse and instruction and prevention. And it's age appropriate, it's medically accurate, and it doesn't shame or fear children. So they're seeking children to come forward and tell when they see something or are involved in something that is potentially sexually abusive in nature. So I just want to clarify, that is a new Senate bill, probably since I know for sure when I came out of school, it's a new law.
I apologize. I thought you were talking about the campus safety and security monitors that actually running classes or performing those functions.
I guess I was hinting at that because I didn't really know that was the Aaron's Law was happening. But I guess the other thing was just so long as they're the people that are on this screen are also watching the teachers, because sometimes they're bad actors, unfortunately. So anyway, thank you.
I'm gonna go on to another commissioner. Let's hit Commissioner Winbrough.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation, particularly the reactive versus planned aggression cat memes. I feel like that caters to my intellect level, so I hope that Holly, Officer Tester, and Chief Skinner was taking note. Yeah, really appreciated the dynamism and particularly working with outside agencies as part of a continuum of care. I have a friend who works for Hoots, the kind of school outreach, and I'm coloring way outside the line, so I'm hoping that you can kind of inform me. But to my modest understanding, it's taking the CAHOOTS model of trauma-informed care and doing mobile mental health outreach. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about any interface that 4J has with the HOOTS model through the Whitebird Clinic. We're talking about the CAHOOTS program later today, and just maybe some of the potential pitfalls, but also some of the pluses of interfacing with outside organizations that do mental health service provision. Because to some of the earlier points, it seems like there could be some conflict, or it might not fit seamlessly within your continuum of care.
Carrie, do you want to take that?
Actually, do you mind if I do?
Oh. Yeah, actually, I was just going to say, I just put in the chat, we have one more speaker, and I think it'll all kind of fall in place once you hear from Sherry on the behavioral safety assessment, threat assessments, and then also from Angie, who's up next on the suicide prevention. And then we'd be happy to answer any questions that aren't covered in the presentation.
And I think I'll just go ahead. So I'm the suicide prevention specialist for the Eugene School District. I started a year ago, January, because we needed some help to get in compliance with Senate Bill 52, which is Addie's Act, which mandates that all schools have a suicide prevention program, processes, and procedures in place. And so that we've been rolling fast ever since, trying to get supports to our kids and our staff. To answer your question, yes, we work with Hoots. They are in our high schools 1 day a week at each high school. And so they rotate, it's a half day really at each high school. And they do suicide screenings. They talk to kids about anything, which is wonderful. And they are a big support to our counselors because they are so trained and specialized in that, in specific mental health crisis. And so we really appreciate the partnership. And one of my jobs is to build community partners, relationships with community partners. And I, as many as I can get, we're trying to connect because we are under-resourced right now in this area. So that kind of touches on your question there. So my job is to write the suicide prevention plan in collaboration with the mental health work group, so that is posted to our website. You can find it under the Student Wellness and School Safety department. And that kind of outlines our processes. I'm going to just kind of go over this really quickly. I know we don't have a ton of time. In my mind, suicide prevention touches on every aspect of education. Prevention, you want to go to the next slide, Sherry? So when we talk about suicide prevention, historically 4J has lived what we call in the intervention, which are the waterfall moments, where we're rescuing and we're trying to save them. And obviously postvention would be over the waterfall. There's a lot of river metaphors in the prevention world, and we're really trying to move upstream with our efforts. And what that looks like in school is bringing in robust SEL, which is social emotional learning programs. We're trying to get sources of strength, which is a specific suicide prevention program that's been empirically proven and is being funded by ODE and OHA right now. And those programs really just build that resiliency, it's building that sense of belonging, connection. It's having kids know who a trusted adult is. And we're really trying to make sure that kids can lean into their strengths, so that if they were to, say, fall into these waterfall moments, they could make it to the side and not end up going over the waterfall's edge. So historically, we've been in intervention and postvention, and like with the hiring of me and my efforts and our team's efforts are really to move upstream and get some programs, some intentional programming in place, and working again with our community partners to make sure we can get the prevention piece set. You want to go to the next slide, please? So what happens in our schools if we have a student who has ideation or is seeing having some other sort of mental health crisis, is a student can be referred by anyone. And that means it can be referred by another student, a teacher, a parent. And we had a lot of parents reach out during digital learning to the staff. And during that time, then it goes to what we call is a trained screener, that referral. And that's our school nurse, school psychologist, school counselor, or a school administrator. And from there, they would go through what we call internally as the CSSRS, the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. So they are screened by asking a series of questions, and a risk level is determined. So from there, then they are contacting the parent or guardian, unless one of the triggers happens to be the family or the parent themselves, then they are going to reach out to DHS. They are required by law to inform another person that they have done this screening, another adult in the building, not just anyone, it has to be the administrator. And they're required by law to contact the parent or guardian after they've done this screening, and or DHS, and which is the Department of Human, it's Child Resources, Human Resources. I always knew it as DHS, but I think it's Child Services. And from there, they will create a safety plan if that's necessary for the student, and schedule follow-ups. And from there, we schedule follow-ups, even if it's a low-risk student, because we know that things can change. We just want the students to know they're not alone. And to check in, it can be a short check-in. If there's an emergency, then we're going to reach out to Cahoots for de-escalation. And usually if we call 911 and say the situation, they'll dispatch Cahoots. If their call log is full, then we might get EPD. And that's kind of the way that it goes in the school. do you want to move to the next slide, please? So what we're seeing in our schools right now, as you can imagine, and what you've probably seen in the press or seen in your surrounding peer circles, are an increase in anxiety and depression. This pretty much is our new baseline. And so students we're seeing are closer to fight or flight, which is, it oftentimes leads to a lot of dysregulation, and it goes into Sherry's area. Like, we see a lot of more kids dysregulated just with behavior in general and with their emotions and what they're able to tolerate. The resiliency isn't quite as high, so that's why we're trying to move upstream and build more strengths and resiliency. There's been an increase in suicidal ideation and attempts in this past year, and some of our local stats are, and I would say since September we started, or last year we started catching data from our screening data as aggregate, like how many ideations have we had, how many attempts, things like that. And this fall, since September, we have had 190 students screened for ideation and or attempts. 27% of those are under the age of 10. So this is a K-12 problem. This is not just a middle school, high school issue. And we have 22% that are actually attempts that have been hospitalized. I will tell you that starting this program during a pandemic with my documentation process, I would say we don't have 100% fidelity to the reporting process yet. So these numbers are very underrepresented. But to top it all off, I'd say the biggest frustration that we have right now is the lack of local mental health resources for our children. And this is the most, I think, frustrating element that we have to deal with, is parents who are scared, who want help, who are trying to get help, doing all the right things, can't get into mental health care. And so they just, it's very, this part of my job, that part is pretty heartbreaking, because we need to do something else in this area to support our kids and their family and our communities. And so that's where the community partnership, I truly believe, comes in, is this issue is not limited to one sports team, one school, one region of town. It hits everyone in the community, and we have to work together to build something that's better.
Thanks, Angie. Thank you, Clark, and thank you, Sherry. One thing I want to add is we have a really amazing team that I'm really proud of, doing really good work in this community for prevention to serve children and keeping children at the heart of all of our issues, and helping their families navigate the system. We're excited to let you know, first out of anyone, we're also going to be looking to hire 2 new mental health positions for our department. We asked for 4 with some of the new, you may have heard about ESSER dollars or the student investment dollars. ESSER was the one-time funds for COVID, and then the SIA dollars is the student investment account dollars. Those are the long-term monies that are coming in from the PERS reform from the state of Oregon. And so eventually those are going to be reoccurring funds, and we are confirmed to utilize 2 of those positions for mental health providers. Just very hard to fill. We opened it in, I believe, 3 months ago, and we're unable to get a successful candidate. And now we've been funded with a second position. So that's exciting. And some of the things that we're going to be doing is including our equity inclusion team. We have recently hired social workers, 5 of them, and we have some wraparound services, and they're going to be coming in as a conduit to our department as well to, again, build a system. And we're excited that we're going to be hiring an administrator position in our department to really create the vision and bringing these other departments together to really focus on what's that vision going to look like and how are we going to provide services in an equitable manner, but more importantly, in a sustainable manner, and something that can be utilizing the resources and the nonprofits in our community, and constantly looking for new ways to serve children and families. Any questions?
Yes, I have just one. It'll be brief. This is for Angie Meyer. You talked about lack of mental health resources for kids. So whenever I hear that, what are you looking for? What's of a place? If there wasn't a lack of it, where would we be at? What does that look like? What are you trying to achieve?
We certainly could use a crisis, like a mental health crisis center for youth, rather than just the hospital right now. That's all we have. That and a youth detox center would be really helpful in our community. One of the issues we have is, for example, we have a student who was discharged from the hospital for an attempt, can't get into just a therapist for 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 6 months. It's insane. That is crazy. That's why we're trying to hire two, so they could provide that bridge service until they get into care. Now we have the CATS program through the Child Center, but there's a limitation. They have some limitations due to their funding. And that has to do with insurance and things like that. And if they are already seeing a mental health specialist. We also have an issue where like kids might be on medication from their general practitioner, and then they're trying to get into a psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. So the general practitioners, I've talked to a couple of the pediatric groups, OMG and Peace Health, and they've both said, like, you know, they're doctors, but they're not trained specifically in mental health, and they're having to triage a lot of the mental health concerns, and they don't even have enough psychiatrists to refer to. So it's really the providers, there's waiting lists. There's just waiting lists everywhere.
If I could just add something, so much of Angie and my work overlaps. So we have common potential indicators that we see children expressing, and then we term that a child in distress. So I think having an external mental health specialist available to be able to see those children when we see those initial potential indicators before they travel down that road to harm to self or harm to others. So that would be ideal, because then we can put in that early intervention and prevent them from traveling down that pathway.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Nguyen?
Thank you, Chair Boggs. And thank you all for this really insightful presentation. I've learned a lot. You mentioned there's an increase in suicidal ideation in the student population, but what is the school doing to raise the morale while we're in this pandemic? Are there any programs that they're doing that they haven't done before, with this increase of suicidal ideation? Because you can only do so much, as you know. I think the overall program of the school can have an impact as well. So that's my first question. If you don't mind, if I give you another question so that you can answer all of them together or separately. The other question is, are you seeing the increase resulting from families with financial or domestic violence history, or is this just smorgasbords of different issues? Can you answer to these questions?
Yeah, I can talk about the programs that we're seeing right now that we're trying to push forward that are new. One of them is Sources of Strength. And it was started by on a reservation by an educator in a reservation who went to 35 funerals in 1 year for students who had died by suicide. And he reached out to all these professors at different universities saying, help, we need help. So then they started their research, and they found, what they did was they found these 8 protective factors is what they found. These are the 8 most common protective factors that people leaned on when they were trying to overcome adversity, and it helped them through adversity. And so it's really a talk on, it flips the script from what hurts to what helps. It's acknowledging what their situation is, but then saying, gosh, tell me how you got through that. You're here today. What did you do to get through that situation? And so that's one of the programs that we're really pushing. It's new, and we're still in the infancy stages of getting that going. And there are campaigns, school-wide campaigns that occur, and in elementary, we're piloting the curriculum. And so that's kind of, I would say, the biggest school-wide push, aside from just care and connection. We are pushing connection, it's prevention. We know that if you have a trusted adult, that is the largest protective factor that you can have. So if we know our people and our kids in our community, it can be a game changer. And if we recognize everyone for their inherent dignity and they feel safe in school to fail and, fail forward and learn and grow and their gifts, and then they're going to be more inspired to use them in service to one another. And so that's kind of the goal and the push. But we're again, I've been here a year, and I feel like we've had a lot of success, but there's a long way to go. And then the other part about remind me, I'm sorry, your second one.
Yeah, it's okay. The other one was, if there are any noticeable trend or history with family having domestic violence, financial, economic, challenges in the family. And then the other thing too that I didn't mention is school bullying. I think with the Asian students, I don't know if you have any that are, from Asian Americans, because with the targeting of Asians due to the pandemic, resulting from, China, has definitely, made some people, behave unruly, and wrongfully accuse, Asian Americans, especially kids who have nothing to do with this. Some of them were born here, some of them, have absolutely no responsibility for the virus at all. All of them don't have any responsibility for the virus, but they may be blamed for it. They may be targeted. So I'm wondering if you have noticed any of those trends.
Can I answer that one, Angie?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to share, we recently had an incident at North Eugene High School involving hate and bias, and Eugene Police Department, I really want to give a big shout out to, because they had their SIU unit right on at North Eugene High School. We found out Sunday evening late. They were there Monday morning at 8:30 to assist us and say that, hey, we have no place for hate in our community. And I really appreciated that. I know our superintendent really appreciated that. And I know certainly those students and family members appreciated that support from Detective Kurt Newell and Eugene Police. And so what came out of that? This was just recently, and we're still waiting on Instagram to find out who those individuals are. However, what some of the takeaways we did take is we implemented a new program through our DEI team for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've implemented a hate and bias advisory team. And we're working with partners. We have our general counsel involved. We have our DEI team. We have teachers. We have educators. We have different entities in the BIPOC community that are sharing. We're reaching out to the NAACP. We're reaching out to different communities to try and say, again, what's our message? And just this last month, literally 2 weeks ago, we created like the videos you saw earlier. We have a company on contract to help us create these video vignettes. They're 3 minutes and shorter to just try and tell our stories. We don't do a great job as a community of telling the good works we're doing. And so we and our team wanted to highlight all of the good that we are doing and trying to accomplish. And one of those videos was on hate and bias and just saying we have no place for hate. So we collaborated with NAACP, our newly formed DEI team, and that'll be, I hope, out in the next 3 weeks. So we are seeing seeing bullying, and we don't have a mechanism currently for reporting structure, and that's something we're working on creating. And we're toying with a dashboard, much like you've seen for COVID. We are working on a dashboard so we can be transparent. That's something that our superintendent has talked about with me, and our superintendent, Sydney Vanderkar, is really, I have to give her, again, more thanks, because I started in 3 years ago and it was a team of one. She's allowed this growth to happen in the efforts of prevention. And through the pandemic, we've seen so many gaps in our net, if you will, for kids that are falling through. And I appreciate the fact that her investment in our team and prevention in our community is a place that we're going as a district, because we're long overdue as a community and as a district. We need to start serving kids better.
Thank you. I think though, for every single kid who comes up to you or to the program and said, or to their teacher and confess that they've been, harassed and bullied, I think you're probably not going to hear from, 10 or maybe, I don't know what the number is, but statistically, you probably have a small percentage that actually reported. And the sad thing is the other 9 or the other 10, you're not going to hear from them.
We've also implemented Safeoregon. It's something that's new to Eugene 4J. It's a state program, and it's anonymous reporting system through Oregon State Police. And so you can get online to go to safeoregon.com. You can use a phone number and call 1-800-4SAFE-OR. And then you can also email tip@safeoregon.com. It's 100% online, anonymous. I can't see who it is unless they tell me it's Carrie Skinner who's filing this, and then they want contact. But we have implemented that. We've put out posters and really tried to be intentional in the way we implement that to parents and families, but also students. So I know it was previously mentioned, we have 3 minutes, the TikTok challenges that were going on. We're seeing a lot of social media online activity that is harmful to all kids. And unless it's a crime, we have no way of determining who the internet provider is, who the subscriber is. And so sometimes students will report through Safeoregon that, hey, somebody intends to lay hate and do something harmful to X, Y, or Z. And then we will follow up. Our entire team gets those Safeoregon tips, as does the building administrator if a school is identified. And so those come in very frequently, and we do follow up on each and every one, and we have to close them out with disposition.
Great. Now, just to let the remaining hands that are up know, we have about 5, we probably go 10 minutes top. So let's try to keep it to one question and get a response. Counselor Ye?
That might be hard. So Carrie, I want to first appreciate that. I think this is the second meeting I've been in with you in the last month. I really appreciate you being willing to go out to the community and talk about this stuff. It's really, really important. So I wanted to kind of bring this back to how your work relates to EPD, which is why we're all here. And I'm wondering, we transitioned from having the safety or SROs, safety resource officers or something like that, to this new system that you have here. And I will agree with Bonnie. I think having women on should be a very high priority going forward. I'm wondering if this transition has had a negative effect on how you're able to do your job without having EPD in the facilities and having their own space, and like how that's gone, and if there's ways that can go better going forward. Or
Great question, Counselor Ye. As you know, that's a really political question that I don't really feel comfortable talking about. It's very polarizing right now with our school board. And I think that should be a question really directed to our school board in just complete transparency. I will answer part of that question.
I guess I wasn't saying like if it's a good or a bad, but just like because of this is where we are, right? What is the effect? Maybe not negative, or like what is the general effect?
Well, as you know, yeah, definitely. As you know, Eugene Police are running from call to call to call all throughout the city. And there's a priority level. And I think that's something the community doesn't quite understand, that maybe I do understand because I have been a law enforcement officer. And so the calls for service, 4J or Bethel or Springfield School District, you name the school district in this community, and we're not going to stack high on the priority level for a criminal trespass situation. And, most recently, I have to, again, give a big credit to Eugene Police. And again, it's actually Detective Newell. And I know it's more than just the one individual detective, but we recently had somebody masturbating at Chavez Elementary. And a student may have seen, but a staff member certainly saw. And, most officers may not have that time to process that case, but he did. He followed up. He went to Albertsons, pulled video footage, hours and hours of body cam footage to try and identify this individual. And that's the stuff that moves the needle. That's the stuff that keeps our community safe, and keeps children safe. Chavez Elementary, again, Councilor Ye, you were in the meeting with the Cheetah Pack with me, and I'm really appreciative to the city for helping, being a partner to 4J in that matter. And EPD responds when we call. And sometimes, we don't have that timely response because priorities are not as high for like a criminal trespass situation. However, when we have a more egregious incident, they do respond. We've had several incidents of where we had to, lock out our schools. That means there's police activity in the neighborhood. And within the last, while our school resource officers were removed from schools, we did have an incident at Holt Elementary where Springfield Police, Eugene Police, and I believe Oregon State Police were searching for a robbery suspect with a weapon. And so we went into a lockout. And so, a few minutes later, we were trying to evacuate kids because school was over and parents are saying, hey, we need our kids. We didn't have a school resource officer to help us with that task. Bethel School District did. They actually lent us their SRO to come help us navigate that safely in evacuating kids from the school and getting them on buses. A few minutes later, we had another incident on the other end of town, 16 minutes away at Howard Elementary, which is also in the North region next to Kelly Middle School, which is also part of the YG community for our Chinese immersion program. And there was another incident there with, and there's a kind of a donut hole or a pocket hole, which is Lane County Sheriff's Office response. And so they had a barricaded subject, and he had a weapon and had been known to fire out rounds out of his house. Again, a stone's throw from our school. And so we were in a lockout at that school. And again, Eugene Police stepped up and provided information to help us navigate a safe evacuation for students, because again, it was at release time. So, we're definitely in a position where we appreciate Eugene Police stepping in and helping us. It would be nice to have a dedicated resource again, just because EPD can't respond to us in a timely manner based on the other calls for service in the city. And I understand that, we understand that, and I appreciate that they keep on helping and providing support to our students when we need them. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Commissioner Dominguez?
Hey, so just as kind of a side note, so you had said that you need a youth detox center or a youth crisis center. I'm not sure if those need to be within a school or if they could be like one thing where you send all the students, but just because we're limited on time, I guess I'll say it's my understanding that the county has supposedly $30 million to spend, and they're considering putting in a baseball stadium at Lane County Fairgrounds. I think that'd be really good for you to gather up people and say, how about maybe you do this thing where, you put a crisis center for youth instead of a baseball, because, I just feel like it seems kind of a weird thing. Anyway, that's all I was going to suggest. So
who would like to answer her question there?
I can say that would be for the community.
Yeah, except Bonnie, those are kind of apples and oranges. The bonds that they would do for the baseball stadium would be revenue bonds that would be paid back by the revenues of the stadium. So it's kind of apples and oranges.
I hear that they also want to develop other stuff though, in addition to.
But they wouldn't do that unless they had the stadium.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Available for other uses.
Okay.
Because there wouldn't be any way to pay it back.
Roger, thank you.
Dr. Garcia?
Yeah, so first off, I just want to say that it's really nice to see school violence treated as a wellness issue, both harm against self, but also the harm against others when that's ideated and threatened. And so that framework got me to thinking when the topic switched over to bullying, bullying is as much a wellness issue for the victims and as well as the perpetrators. And I know I had a graduate student I was working with some years ago who was doing her PhD dissertation on bullying, specifically anti-gay and lesbian bullying and transgender bullying in a middle school. And one of the things that she found was that because class sizes are what they are nowadays, because teachers' attention had to be on the whole class, that what she saw happening over and over again was that the students who were being bullied were then identified in turn as the causes of disruption, because at the point where there's a disruption, what the teacher sees is that this student is present every time. And so I'm wondering, so I just want to say that I feel like bullying is something that has to be addressed. It can't be addressed in a zero tolerance way or in a way that understands, as much as I appreciate the work that communications specialists do with their videos and stuff, it's not true that there's no place for intolerance in our community. There's a lot of intolerance in our community, and we have to acknowledge that the people who are intolerant and the children who are bullies are as much part of our community, and that the kind of understanding that they are outside doesn't really allow us to reach them in the way that I think we want to, especially when we're talking about children. And so, it's a difficult thing to say as a survivor of bullying as a child, but we do have to have a sense of those students who are bullies, who are incredibly cruel, who are doing awful things, as children who need a serious amount of help. And so I'm very heartened to hear the overall framework that's being voiced from you, and I hope that follows all the way through the services. I'm going to sneak in, since that wasn't really a question, it's just a comment.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to sneak in a question, which is that
and just so you know, if you have a follow-up question, Commissioner Dominguez, we'll go ahead and attack that. We'll address that, because we might not be having our next speaker hasn't joined yet. So ask your questions. Go ahead.
Okay. So the DPSST training for unarmed security, I'm wondering if that's the same, and I might have missed this, but I'm wondering if that's the same training that CSOs received, the community safety officers? And if it is, if it might be possible in the future for this body to have a training session on how the DPSST training differs for CSOs and for unarmed security and for regular police officers. I would, as someone who knows a little bit about the training for police officers, I would be curious to know how those differ and just what the elements are that differentiate the two, other than obviously firearms training.
I think I can answer that question. Maybe Chief Skinner wants to answer that also. I don't believe the CSOs, the community services officers, attend DPSST's private security program training. DPSST requires anyone who's in a security professional role. They require a 14-hour class, and then they also require an executive manager be responsible for those, like in our sense, campus safety and security monitors. But you may also see individuals who are in the bar industry, they're bouncers. You could also see event management that are wearing security shirts. And the state basically said there has to be some level of training for, the common person to go to an event and have an expectation of kind of some rules. And so you may see alarm companies that you see like this Securitas or other companies, they check doors, they check windows. They are required to be DPSST certified because again, that comes back to security. And since law enforcement attends DPSST's training as a basic police officer course, I believe, and I'll refer to Chief Skinner, but I believe the EPD may have an in-house academy for their CSOs or a reserve officer academy that would be different to frame some sort of education and training through in-service. Does that help answer that question?
We'll see what Chief Skinner says.
Okay.
This is where I say what she said.
Great.
Then yes.
And Dr. Garcia, I'm happy to get a little bit of detailed information on those different certificate programs so you can kind of see what the curriculum looks like and how different it is.
Another good thing to note about the community service officers are they're handling more of, less of a threat kind of crime. So like say the burglaries, there needs to be a burglary report and there's no suspect on scene. Those are the kind of calls that they're handling versus like if there is somebody on scene, obviously you're going to get an officer sent, a patrol officer there. So just different kind of calls. They're definitely the big helpers and they help alleviate patrols calls for service that we would normally have to go to. Community service officers are excellent in that fashion.
Thank you.
Sherry, you were about to speak.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Garcia, I just wanted to mention something about the bullying that you brought up. I'm really glad that you mentioned that too, because I think it is really important to look at the students who are engaged in bullying as they have lagging skills. And so if we look at that, then we see that it could be that they just need more education surrounding that social skill piece. It could be a lack of empathy they need to develop. And so the school staff can help them work on that. Or it could be what we also say is mad is sad's bodyguard. And so they're displaying this bullying behavior because they were bullied or there's something going on at home and so that's where that trauma-informed care comes in, where we step in and say, what's happening for you? Even though they are displaying these negative externalizing behaviors, it's our job. There's this great saying, first and foremost, somebody must be crazy about this kid. And so maybe they just need that wraparound service to change their outlook on life and to change their behavior. So we really do try and look at aggression from that trauma-informed perspective as this is a child in distress.
Thank you.
Commissioner Shivers.
Thank you. So I'm really glad, Michael, that you mentioned class sizes, because my question is that with the state of current education, with class sizes continuing to grow, teacher retention dropping, I'm very worried that a lot of the issues that rise from that are treated as disciplinary issues, and wondering how much of that stuff falls in your lap and how much could be avoided with more reasonable ability of teachers to give attention to the students under their care.
That's a good question. I'm going to defer that to Sherry because as a school psychologist and as a behavioral safety assessment specialist, she's working with, again, finding resources locally here in our community. And one of the programs we're looking at hasn't been completely vetted, but we're looking at a program called SWIFT. So Sherry, do you want to talk about that a little bit? And then Angie, I just want to make sure you can talk about Care Solace and what we're looking at too.
Yeah, thanks. We do see the number of students in a class has significantly increased. And we always say increased stress, increased symptoms. So given what we're facing, the large rise in class size plus this cultural stress that we all have gone through, then we do see increased behaviors, which does definitely make it hard for teachers to not only deliver that like set curriculum, but think outside the box for those outlier kids who don't learn in the same way, plus deal with the kids who are displaying that externalizing behavior for whatever reason, whether they have a difficult time at home, whether they are having social conflict, whatever it is, it makes it way harder for the teacher. And we do have things like push-in services where special education staff will come into the classroom and work one-on-one with a child or a small group of kids. So there are things to help, but definitely overall, it has made the job much more difficult. Carrie and I went into a classroom recently and got to observe, and we had calculated, and I think it was 30% of the kids were on task at any given point. So if you think about that, that's 70% that was engaged in something else for one teacher. It was really difficult, and that teacher was a seasoned teacher. There was nothing that I could see that she was doing that I would have suggested. Like, she was doing everything that I would have already said. So for sure, it's a hard job this year. I think we are in a survival mode. And I think that's why we're saying connection is prevention. Like, research is clear. If a child connects with one positive pro-social adult outside of their family system, their outcome is going to be better. So this year, we really need to be focused on that social emotional piece and connecting with their kids.
Thank you very much. I worked on the bond measures and the levy, and it's been a problem for a while. I know COVID makes it worse, but even once we transition away, I'm worried that we'll continue to make societal problems into police problems, and I want to make sure we try to nip that in the bud.
Sure.
Great. Do we have any more questions?
Angie, can you just quickly touch on Care Solace?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, the most frustrating part of my job is not being able to connect people with help that really want help and need help. And so there's a organization called Care Solace, and what they are care connectors. And so basically you can put in a referral. This is an amazing program in that it's a subscription program. So it's paid for by subscription, and that's per student through the district. So it's like you pay for however many students you have. And all staff then have access to it, and then all families have access to it. And so if your subscription is a year, that encompasses summer and all the holiday breaks. And what they do are connect people with mental health and supports and therapy and provider and substance use and misuse support. So those are the two areas of their connection. And so what they do is, like, if I were to refer someone to the service within a half hour, that provider, someone will be assigned to them. They have over 100 languages. You can have cultural preference. They have a big staff, and that person will reach out to them with the family within a half hour and start helping them navigate the healthcare system, which is just really difficult right now to navigate. And so basically what happens is then the care connector does all the calling, all of the emailing, trying to get them into the type of care that they need. They start in your local community, and they will exhaust all of those resources before moving outside of the community. And they connect people with care within 2 to 3 weeks, whereas our waits are months right now. And so to me, I'm like, please, can we get this service? Because I had 5 kids today, 5 families today that needed this help. The cool thing is anyone peripherally attached to the 4J, could use this service. You can anonymously go on. If employees don't want to use their, employee assistance program, to me, it seems like we have to do it. We don't have enough mental health in-house, and our counselors are exhausted trying to call all of these places and hearing that they can't. And from what they tell us, it saves people 15 hours a week, one person, because they're calling. It'll give you once you've made the referral, it gives you a dashboard and you can see that the person has made 60 phone calls and sent, 75 emails on behalf of that one family. And so to know that, like, it would be amazing.
And the subscription is paid by 4J or by, okay.
It would have to be, it's paid by by the school district.
But let's be clear, we don't have that. That's something our team is investigating to bring forward, because we are seeing such a shortage in our community of services. Recently, within the last, I want to say 4 months, Senator Ron Wyden came to our community to talk about mental health. And we have kids that are 5th grade that are going to the hospital for mental health and suicidal ideations. And the hospitals are sending them home with no support because we don't have providers that can provide that service. And so that's concerning for our department, for our community, for our school district. And so we're trying to be clever with other resources that are available, and call centers for suicide prevention through Oregon Health Authority. Is that available? No. Well, then Lines for Life. Oh gosh, maybe that's a possibility. So we're just looking at resources and trying to be innovative and rebuild options.
Great. Well, I think that might wrap up the presentation. Is there any more questions, or are we there? Okay, as we move forward. Yesterday, myself, the vice chair, Holly, the mayor of Eugene, and the city manager had a quarterly update. Instead of giving you all every detail of the meeting, basically, we talked about things that we have done. We talked about things that we're working on. We talked about things that we have in the future. A lot of, basically, I utilized our work plan, and then if they had any questions, we tried to answer those. I believe the meeting went very well. We got to meet each other, got to talk. We have quarterly meetings as far as what we're doing. But also in that meeting, the vice chair had brought up, and we're going to kind of go over it with the chief, was like he was getting a lot of people in the community coming to him needing something more detailed with the Wow Hall incident, the shooting that went on. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Skinner to address what was brought up by Commissioner Mogart, and see if we can address that now. Chief Skinner.
Thank you, Chair Boggs. Before I give a little bit of a briefing on this, I'll just say to just close the loop on this last conversation around mental health services in our community, is that the state of Oregon, last time I checked, ranks dead last in the nation around investing in mental health services. And so when you hold that dubious honor of being dead last, it probably isn't a huge shock that we don't have the types of services we need, not only for our kids, but for all of us that need to access those services. So just unfortunate. I think it's a local, it's a state, it's a federal issue that we need to continue to lean into. See if we can.
51st if you count Guam, Chief.
Yeah, exactly. Guam's ahead of us. They've got it figured out.
And that's funding for
mental health services. Overall investment by a state or territory in their mental health services, and it's just a really sad sad testament to how we prioritize that. Okay, let me move on to this. I know that and I may not hit the sweet spot at all on this, but I'll leave it to Silver to help provide some context. The Wow Hall shooting that happened a few weeks ago, I think it's not a shock that it's probably one of the most impactful and most significant shootings that we've had. We were very lucky that we didn't end up with fatalities in that particular situation. And so it's an ongoing criminal investigation, significant criminal investigation. that we're doing. And the nuances of this investigation are unique in a sense that there's not a lot of evidence that we were able to gather or have since gathered that has led us down some specific paths. The good news is that as we better understood some of the players that were involved and witnesses that were involved, whether you're a victim or a witness or even a potential suspect, we better understood kind of what the relationships are between people. And now we've gone back out and we're re-interviewing people in some respects, maybe asking the right questions that we didn't have early on in the investigation. So we're putting every effort into this. It reminds me a little bit of when we had the Taylor's Bar and Grill killing of the young man in the back parking lot. That was a really tough one to solve because we didn't have a ton of information, and yet our investigators got it figured out, and we made an arrest in that case. And so, what I can say is that there is momentum in this case. There are some things that we are working on that I'm not going to share in a public forum, but we are moving in a direction that I'm confident in that we're going to be able to resolve and better articulate what the relationship was between our suspect and potential victims. The one thing I will say is that the WOW Hall in general has been a great partner to work with. I've been in contact with that executive director several times. She has been doing some really good proactive things around that historic site and making sure that we don't stigmatize the event and have it stigmatized and be synonymous with violence. I don't think that that's fair in this particular case. And at some point, and trust me, there will become a point where we'll be able to tell this entire story and kind of put those pieces together. But I'm sensitive to the fact that people are desiring information and are hungry for information and details. But Silver, much like a pitcher covers his mouth with his glove when his catcher comes to talk to him, and you know the reasons why they do that. That's kind of the posture that we've taken a little bit, just because of the type of information we have is one of those things that we just don't want to tip our hand on just quite yet.
Yeah, as long as there's some movement and finding somebody and apprehending it. In this case, a person literally walked away from a shooting. And so from what I'm hearing from the community, there's a lot of safety concerns.
Yeah, one of the early things we tried to do is try to establish whether this was, as best we could, whether this was a random act, which would suggest maybe an ongoing threat to the community around other types of random acts, or if maybe this was more targeted. I'm not sure we had a full sense of that. What I would say is now I think we have a better sense of the relationship between everybody. We've done some significant traveling up and down the West Coast and have conducted interviews and met with individuals to better understand that. And so I'm hopeful to be able to come out and talk a little bit more about the story, but I am sensitive to the concept around whether this was a random act of violence and how that kind of can penetrate people differently, especially people that live in and around that downtown core. And so I'm trying to be sensitive to that, and still, nothing more than we want to, quite honestly, throw a shooter in jail. And so I don't want to jeopardize that either.
I appreciate that.
Commissioner Dominguez.
I was just wondering, is the WOW Hall adding like cameras or something?
Mm-hmm. Well, we had cameras at the WOW Hall that were in the back there that weren't really necessarily helpful. They just kind of pointed in a strange direction. I think the executive director, if I remember, Bonnie, one of my conversations with her were looking at doing some of the crime prevention through environmental design stuff that might add some cameras and or add lighting in the back of the WOW Hall, which is super dark back there if you've ever been behind that, and or thinking about as we host events in our community, whether it's at the WOW Hall or the fairgrounds or Matt Night Arena, when we know who the artist is, oftentimes our special investigation unit can scrub social media and intelligence to better understand whether or not there's going to be any targeted acts of violence or if there's anything that any quote unquote baggage that might bring to our community because of any ongoing feud or bad blood between people. It's not unlike what we do in the way of threat assessment for any event that we have in our community as we look at intelligence. And so I think there'll be a little bit more involvement there where we see if there's anything, because what's predictable is preventable. And so if we have, say, an artist that has been in some other part of the country that something went really south at their concert and then they're coming to Eugene, then that's something we want to pay attention to and try and learn from somebody else's mistakes and make sure we have a safe event here in Eugene.
And just out of curiosity, so is this something that you could suggest to like places like the Holton or ask them, do you have cameras and are they pointed in the right direction? Because this last place apparently hasn't been checking out where their cameras pointed.
Yeah, we try to involve ourselves the best we can without being a little overbearing. We've got a team of our community engagement team actually does a great job of going and meeting with businesses and making those suggestions. One of the things that we've been kicking around is whether or not EPD should be in the permitting process to evaluate crowd size, crowd dynamics, and just offer some suggestions around whether or not there should be some extra security and or off-duty police officers assigned to that on overtime at their expense. Most of these are for-profit organizations. It's my former agency, all those permits ran through my office so that we had exposure to the events that were happening, and we could do the work and we could make some suggestions around how to manage larger crowds. That was a part of the permitting process. And so we're thinking about how we might do that a little differently moving into the future.
Sorry, this is the last question on the topic. So let's say that it's not necessarily something that's required by the permitting office. I do work in architecture actually. And I was just wondering, can we bring plans to you and are you able to provide suggestion? We'll pay you, obviously. We'd get the client to do that anyway.
One of the services we provide is always crime prevention through environmental design or engineered design safety measures. And we have a team of people that are really good at that. So if you have anything that anybody ever wants us to take a look at and just offer a few suggestions based on whether it's a schematic or drawings, that is just a service that we feel like we need to provide and will continue to provide. So yes, we will do that.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right. So thank you, Chief, for helping as best as you could. Let us know where we're at on that shoot. I want to start off on closing comments. If Chief, you could put down the date or write a date down. It's February 20th, and from 6:30 to 8:30, the Black community will be doing a meeting at the St. Mark's Church. And what I was asked from this position is to let you know about that meeting. There'll be Black leaders there, and some type of either drive-by or something. There's no need for someone to be there 100%, but just to know that there's the Black community is doing something important at that time.
I noticed Holly was feverishly taking down notes. Remember, Holly's in dual role mode as police mission liaison and Chief Skinner's babysitter, because I need a lot of babysitting.
Right.
And I would just say thank you for that date, because that's important. We've got a special relationship with St. Mark's Church here at EPD, and Pastor Mushintabi and others. We actually are the administrative body that is going to be shepherding upwards of $200,000 towards St. Mark's Church through some state and federal grants to do some capital improvements. And we're really, really excited that we were able to be kind of their partner in that and help them understand how to get some of that work done through the government contracting stuff. So we've got a really special relationship with them. So I'm happy to make sure that we pay attention to that.
Great. So as we continue closing comments, let us start with Commissioner Winbrock.
Yeah, thanks so much for the meeting today. It was great to be able to see the folks from the school district come in, and it was really humbling to learn all the work that's being done. Just wanted to say two things. I'd love to join you at EPD headquarters for an in-person component fairly soon. I've been looking at the COVID numbers, and I think maybe we can have a deeper conversation around what constitutes safety and how to be able to have hybrid meetings more effectively at a later time. I know that for each of us individually, we're going to make decisions based on our own health, those who are at risk, the COVID numbers, and I would love to have an in-person meeting or join you at EPD probably in March or in April. And then additionally, I just wanted to apologize. Unfortunately, I got your email about meeting with the city manager and the mayor. Too late for me to respond to y'all with some of the outreach activities I've done, but just wanted to offer a potential suggestion that we might be able to work with Holly to create a Google form or some sort of way to capture the outreach we do on a month-to-month basis. That way, you and the vice chair would be able to capture quarterly the work that we're doing individually in a much more effective way, rather than sending out an email, because I'm in grad school now too. So the law school thing kind of hit home in my heart. And I think it would just be more kind of, coming from a place of enlightened self-interest. It'd be easier for me to fill out a form every month than have to think back for the past year of outreach that we've been doing. So happy to help share some tracking forms that we use to be able to track our outreach.
And just so you know, I know the outreach that you're doing. I know the outreach that Bonnie's doing. I know the outreach that Silver's doing. I know the outreach that V is doing. So all those different things that y'all are doing, I even shared with the mayor and the city manager, with Sean and his efforts. So I touch on all those things because I use all my notes. So all the things that y'all have ever brought up with neighborhoods, any things you're doing with the Latino community and so forth were brought up. But more in advance for a quarterly meeting, I would love for us to have me better prepared, have write up kind of what's going on. And it could be it has to be a full-blown report. I'm just saying, just touch on the matters. Here's what I'm doing, 4 or 5 bullet points, 3 bullet points. Bonnie gave me a half a page. The whole meeting would have been telling what Bonnie was doing if I read all of her efforts. And I responded to your email, Bonnie, that I saw that you got back. But no, we're on top of it. We did good. So Commissioner Shivers, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry I missed the opening comments, but I really, really appreciate when I had follow-up questions about some of the stops data and some of the statistics. Holly and a number of other people all chimed in. I'm, obviously not completely satisfied. I don't think anybody is, but I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate seeing the upcoming stuff on the agenda. So thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, for putting that on so that I can, do more outreach and get a little bit ahead of questions instead of sending a bunch of emails afterwards.
And just so you know, that was per your request. So that right there is a result of your request. So we listen to what you're telling us. Okay. Commissioner Nguyen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Boggs. I just wanted to say a special thank you to our analyst, Holly Matthews, for the work she's doing for us. I know it's, a lot of communication back and forth between us, and thank you so much for setting up the meeting with the recruitment team for me. Really appreciate that. And I also have a question. I don't know if I missed it, if you announced it earlier, Chair Boggs. What happened to the Cahoots presentation?
The Cahoots, the person from the Cahoots did not check in. So all we can do now is reach out to have them come back at another time. But that allowed us, because we had a lot of heavy questions from the Eugene School District, so we just let that continue. But yeah, that was when she came in and told me. She was trying to get in contact with me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, Councilor Zelenka.
I thought the presentation by 4J was awesome. Learned a lot. Got depressed about halfway through, and then I got better as they really talked about the things that all they were doing. But it's really important work, especially for the suicide prevention and violence and all the mental health issues that are going on these days that are exacerbated by COVID. So that was a really good presentation. Thank you. And they do amazing work.
Yes. Councilor Ye?
I don't have any comments, but great meeting, and I look forward to seeing everyone next month.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis?
I don't have any comments either, and it was good to see everyone.
Dr. Garcia?
Oh yeah, so I also am grateful for the presentation today. It was heartbreaking, and it's good to know that that people are on this, because it's the world that we're living in with these struggles for our children. So so thank you for that, and thank you for all the hard work. Other than that, I don't think I was going to say that. So I'm hoping we could just count my CRB work for my community outreach, since I am the liaison actually from that board.
That's great. Commissioner Dominguez?
Just a few things. I'm hoping that we could explore the idea of applying the DPSST number on Class A, Class B, and plainclothes. Just explore the idea. Maybe see, benefits and cons, I guess. And then I talked to Silver, or he emailed me back, and he was approving the script that I had created for the Aquí en la Ciudad Spanish Facebook / radio announcement about the commission and attendance for the commission. And I was just wondering, could we have people come in and give their testimonial in Spanish? Like, is that a thing? Because I could translate it afterwards. So just wondering about that. Like, what's the procedure there? Like, if somebody wanted to make this statement in Spanish because they don't speak English, but they have things that they have to say.
So what you're saying is that if someone wants to, a guest could come on and they only spoke Spanish.
Yes.
Would you be able to translate it at the exact same time, or would you need a translator?
I might be able to do it. I just every once in a while there's one or two words that I'm not really. It's not super easy to translate to English sometimes for me. But I could probably get the gist of it. So. Yeah,
I would entertain that. It almost sounds more like a presentation than just a guest doing some comments. So if we're prepared for it, if you said on this particular date, a person's going to be doing a presentation and we have a translator and we have a topic, I don't see where there would be a problem.
Okay, so then that means I'd have to adjust the script to include my email probably and get them to tell me that they're going to appear if they want to comment or something. Okay.
Between us, we'll figure it out.
Can I interrupt real quick? We have a panelist here that would like to comment on that question.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Holly. Sorry. Hi, Bonnie and everybody. I just wanted to clarify. So the Aquí en la Ciudad is a weekly Spanish online segment that features City VG News. And what Bonnie and I had been talking about was having a short educational segment about what the police commission does in Spanish, so that the Spanish speaking community knows about what the work that you guys do. But if you ever, Bonnie, if you want somebody from the commission to record something, or we can talk more, I guess is what I'm saying, about what that could look like. We could do a special edition and do sort of an interview setting with Alex Reina, who is the person that leads this educational segment. So we can definitely talk more about that. So feel free to talk to the commission, and then we can work together to see what that would look like, if we would need to air it at a certain time so that more people would tune in. It's something that we would need to look more into, but we can also have possibly staff from the Aquí en la Ciudad production team come and talk to you guys as well about the work that we do, so that we understand what that would look like a bit more. But that's definitely a possibility, just so you guys know.
I think I was just suggesting, like, so I gave you that script, and I guess in addition to that, I just wanted to maybe add a little bit that says, and you can come and comment here if you want.
Oh, sure.
We'll
and I think that, if I'm not mistaken, if anybody ever wants to attend these meetings and they do need translation services, that is something that they can ask for in advance. So that's definitely a possibility as well that we can mention right now.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering that.
No problem. I just want to jump in. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. Commissioner Mogart.
Yes, thank you, Beatrice and Bonnie, for the work that you're doing. For those who don't know, I was also a part of the process involved with the LULAC side of the selection for Beatrice's position and the creation of that position in the police auditor's office. So I think you've done tremendous amount of work, tremendous work, Beatrice, and I applaud you. Keep in mind, there will be people that don't want to speak in a public forum, maybe living in the shadows, that wouldn't want to come out. So if there's a way to kind of gather some of that information online or through dedicated line or some kind of a access point to get that information from somebody who wants to give their testimony, that would be great as well. That said, being the parent of a high school student who will graduate, I cannot begin to imagine the world that the kids live in these days and that they have to face. And I know when I was a young person and I heard the stories from my grandparents or my parents, the world was so hard. I had to walk to school up hills both ways, 10 miles, barefoot through the snow. All those kind of things were jokes, but at the same time, their world wasn't the same as the world that I was growing up in. That compounded 10 times for the kids today because they have a much smaller world. They have so much more access to everything, and to know what they're going through and to see some of the different processes that they have to deal with, the different things that they have to deal with at school. I appreciate the work that Carrie Skinner and the team is doing. I hope, and it is my sincere, deep feeling inside that we don't have any sort of incidences of violence or school shootings or anything happen. And I know that, that's something that these kids have to deal with. They train on that kind of thing. It's crazy to imagine what they're going through today. So I am grateful for the work that's being done to make sure that the schools are safe. I will be the chair I will be sitting in the chair position for the next meeting. As I understand, our chair Boggs will not be here. So if you have anything you'd like to express as far as a topic or agenda, we will be having that meeting, and let us know, and we can kind of filter out what we might talk about next term, the next time we meet.
Yeah, I'll be missing you guys. I will be in San Antonio, Texas, and we'll be celebrating my mother's 85th birthday. So when you're having your meeting, I will actually be in the air. So there's no possible way that I could do both there, but you're in good hands with the vice chair, and he'll be leading the meeting. I do want to let you know that upcoming, we will be having Dr. Johnny Lake will be doing the DEI presentation. And then the following month, one of the issues that I really wanted to be addressed with the domestic violence and sexual assault, I'll be having my sister join us, and she is, well, all my brothers and sisters are lawyers, but my sister, who's a deputy prosecuting attorney in Little Rock, Arkansas, will be talking about, just for us to get a little bit of idea of how they're addressing domestic violence, and we can look at some best practices and kind of go from there. Thank you all, great meeting. We're ahead of time. At this point, we're gonna motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night, everyone.